One unexpected moment can change everything. What started as an ordinary day led me to a discovery that turned my world upside down, and nothing would ever be the same again. My name's Ryan, and I guess I'm here to lay it all out, to make sense of everything, or at least not feel so isolated. For a long time, I thought my life was ordinary in the best way. If you'd asked me about my marriage just a few months ago, I would have said, it's solid. Anna and I have been together for almost 10 years. We met back in college, and for me, it was like everything just clicked. You know, the kind of connection where you don't have to try, it just feels natural. People around us would comment on how we seemed to have it all, good careers, a nice home, and what looked like an unbreakable partnership. And honestly, I was proud of what we'd built. I never doubted her. Not once. Anna was driven and magnetic, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking in. She had this way of making life seem like a game she was always winning, and I loved that about her. We made plans, shared goals, and while kids weren't in the picture yet, I thought we were headed in the right direction. We were a team, or at least, I thought we were. Our weekends had their little routines. We'd hang out with friends or spend the day at the pool, something Anna always loved. She was a swimmer, and for her, those laps were like therapy, her way of shaking off the stress from her job. Most Saturdays, we'd pack up and head to the fancy club we were members of. While she was in the water, I'd usually sit by the pool, drink in hand, and just relax. It was our thing. At least, it was until that day. The day when everything in my life shifted. Looking back, I didn't see it coming. There were no signs, no hints that my world was about to come crashing down. Everything seemed fine, too fine, maybe. It's what eats at me even now. How could something so devastating have been happening right in front of me, and I never saw it? It started like any other Saturday. We slept in, had brunch at our favorite little cafe, and decided to spend the afternoon at the pool. I can still picture it clearly, probably because it was one of those idyllic summer days, the kind that makes you feel like the world is on your side. Anna seemed extra cheerful that morning. She laughed more than usual, kissed me on the cheek before we left, and even put together a playlist for the drive. There was this lightness to her, this easy energy, and I didn't think twice about it. We got to the club, and everything felt normal. I set up in one of the poolside cabanas while Anna dove into the water. She's an amazing swimmer, always has been. Watching her cut through the water was one of those quiet moments that made me love her even more. After about an hour, Anna got out of the pool and said she was going to shower before we headed home. It was part of her routine, so I didn't think anything of it. While she showered, I stayed behind in the cabana, scrolling through my phone and half-heartedly checking work emails. But something felt off this time. I got up to stretch and remembered that I'd left my sunglasses in the locker room. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but I figured I'd grab them before Anna finished so we could leave without having to double back. As I walked through the building, heading down the hall toward the locker rooms, I heard it, voices. Low, muffled voices coming from the showers. At first, I didn't think much of it. People talk in locker rooms, right? But then something about the tone of those voices stopped me in my tracks. They weren't just casual, they were hushed, deliberate. My chest tightened as I strained to make out what was being said. And that's when I felt the first crack in my world. Something wasn't right. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The pool was crowded, with people coming and going constantly. But something about those voices made me stop. One of them was familiar, too familiar. It was Anna. I froze in my tracks, my chest tightening for reasons I couldn't fully understand. My brain scrambled to find a reasonable explanation. Maybe she'd run into a coworker or an old friend. Maybe I was just overreacting. But the unease wouldn't let me go. Against my better judgment, I stepped closer, careful to keep my movements quiet. The voices were coming from the showers, and I strained to hear over the faint echo of water hitting tiles. That's when I caught it, the unmistakable sound of soft laughter, followed by Anna's voice. "Shoo! Someone might hear us." In an instant, my stomach dropped. Ice shot through my veins as those words echoed in my head, warning me of something I wasn't ready to confront. I stood there, frozen, my body refusing to move while my mind raced in 1,000 different directions. I wanted to believe it wasn't what it sounded like. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that I'd misheard, misunderstood. But deep down, I knew. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. My heart pounded in my chest, so loud it drowned out everything else. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and walk away, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't. I had to know. I took another step forward, my legs trembling beneath me. The hallway felt impossibly long, and every step made me feel like I was sinking deeper into a nightmare. I reached the edge of the shower area and paused, barely breathing, as I peeked around the corner. Through the haze of steam, I saw them. Anna had her back to me, standing close, too close, to a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't just some random guy. His hands were on her waist, pulling her toward him, their bodies far too intimate for it to be anything innocent. They were completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to the fact that I was standing just a few feet away, watching everything. For a moment, I couldn't move. My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It felt like time had stopped, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront them? Shout? Walk away? Everything felt surreal, like I was trapped in someone else's nightmare. Then it happened, I must have made a noise. Maybe it was a sharp inhale, maybe my foot shuffled against the tile, but it was enough. Anna froze, her body tensing as if she knew. Slowly, she turned her head, and that's when our eyes met. I'll never forget that look. Her face went pale, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. For a split second, we just stood there, staring at each other through the haze of steam. She didn't speak. Neither did I. The man beside her, some guy who looked to be in his late 30s, started shifting awkwardly, like he was trying to figure out how to escape without making things worse. Something inside me snapped. "What the hell is this, Anna?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. It was shaking, but loud, raw with disbelief and anger. Anna's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her hands fluttered uselessly, like she didn't know whether to defend herself or apologize. The guy beside her had the audacity to start walking toward me, head down, as if brushing past me would make it all go away. I stepped in front of him, my hand shooting out to block his path. "You're not going anywhere," I growled, my voice low and unfamiliar even to me. He froze, his face a mix of guilt and fear. In that moment, I didn't care who he was. All I knew was that he wasn't walking out of here like none of this mattered. I could feel the anger bubbling over, surging through my veins. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I could hold it back. Anna finally spoke, her voice barely audible, like she knew the weight of her words couldn't possibly fix what had just happened. "Ryan, I can explain." I let out a bitter laugh, the kind that doesn't come from humor but from disbelief. "Explain? Are you serious right now? What could you possibly say to make this okay?" I gestured toward the guy, who was still standing there, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. Her lip trembled, and tears started pooling in her eyes. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered. That was it. That's when the dam inside me broke. "Find out what, Anna? That you've been cheating on me? That you've been sneaking around with this guy behind my back?" The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't even try to deny it. That was all the confirmation I needed. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out. I didn't care if she called after me. I didn't care about anything except getting as far away from her as I could. The walk to the parking lot felt endless, and each step brought another wave of realization crashing down on me. My world had just shattered, and I had no idea how to piece it back together. I don't even remember the drive home. It was a blur of emotions, rage, hurt, confusion, all swirling together, choking me. The image of them together in that shower was burned into my mind. The way she looked at me when she realized she was caught, that expression of shock and guilt, it replayed over and over, like a cruel loop I couldn't escape. When I finally pulled into the driveway, it felt surreal. This was our house. The place where Anna and I had built a life together, where we had laughed, planned, and dreamed of the future. Now, it felt tainted. Like every memory inside it had been erased by what I'd just seen. I stepped inside, letting the door close heavily behind me. The silence of the house was almost unbearable. It wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. Rachel wasn't home yet, and I had no idea where she was. Was she still with him? Trying to figure out what to say. Or maybe she didn't care at all. I didn't want to think about it. I walked straight to the cabinet and poured myself a drink, the whiskey burning as it went down. I didn't taste it. I didn't care. The anger inside me wasn't fiery, it was cold, a hard knot sitting in my chest. I knew I needed to get myself under control before she came home. The last thing I wanted was to lose it completely. The minutes dragged by. An hour. 2. The silence stretched on until finally, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Anna walked in, her face pale and blotchy, her eyes red from crying. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. We just stared at each other. She didn't look like the confident, self-assured woman I'd known for so many years. She looked fragile, smaller somehow. But I couldn't summon any sympathy. Not after what I'd seen. "Ryan," she began, her voice trembling. "Please, can we just talk? Talk." I repeated, my voice cold, sharp. "About what? About how you've been lying to me? Or maybe about how you've been sneaking around with him?" She flinched like my words physically hit her, but I didn't stop. I wanted her to feel it, the betrayal, the devastation, the sheer weight of what she had done to us. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said softly, taking a hesitant step toward me. She stopped, though, keeping her distance, like she knew I was barely holding myself together. "It just got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I repeated bitterly, my voice rising. "How long, Anna? How long have you been cheating on me?" She bit her lip and looked away, her silence cutting deeper than any words could have. "Answer me," I snapped, my voice trembling with fury. "How long?" "6 months," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. 6 months. Half a year. Those 2 words hit me harder than anything else she could have said. 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. For half a year, Anna had been lying to me, smiling at me, sharing our bed, all while carrying on behind my back. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. "How could you do this to me? To us?" Her tears fell harder now, streaming down her face in rapid streaks, but I couldn't muster any sympathy. The anger bubbling inside me drowned out everything else. "I don't know," she said between sobs. "I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened." "Don't give me that," I snapped, my voice cutting through her words like a knife. "You don't just accidentally cheat on someone for 6 months, Anna. That's not how this works." She stood there, shaking, her hands twisting together like she was trying to wring the right words out of thin air. But there was nothing she could say. Nothing could erase what I'd seen, or the image of her with that man burned into my mind. "I still love you," she choked out, her voice trembling. "I never stopped loving you." That was the breaking point. I slammed my glass down on the counter, the sharp sound echoing in the room. You don't get to say that, I said, my voice trembling with fury. You don't get to stand there and pretend this is something we can fix. Not after what you've done. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't care. I was done. You need to leave, I said, each word clipped, cold, and final. Her tear-streaked face looked up at me, wide-eyed and full of shock. What? I said, leave, I repeated, my voice firm. Get out of this house. She took a step back, staring at me like she didn't recognize the person in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe this was the first time she truly realized what she destroyed. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't care, I shot back. Go to him. Go anywhere. But you're not staying here. Anna blinked, her body trembling as if she expected me to take it all back. But I didn't. I meant every word. After what felt like an eternity, she finally turned and walked to the door. And just like that, the life I thought we had was over. The silence in the house after Anna left was deafening. It wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and cold. Just hours ago, I thought we were a happy couple, secure in what we'd built together. Now, that life felt like a distant memory, and I was standing alone in the wreckage. I tried to sleep that night, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Anna, with him. Her laughter, her words, her excuses, they haunted me like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Every moment of the past 6 months replayed in my mind, each memory tainted by the knowledge of what she'd been hiding. But something wasn't adding up. 6 months, that's what she said. Yet, in all that time, I hadn't noticed anything off. No signs of detachment, no hints of a second life. If anything, she'd acted completely normal. Too normal. The realization hit me like a second betrayal. She hadn't just lied to me, she'd perfected the lie. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow, drained of every ounce of energy. My body was heavy, my mind foggy, but I knew I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't let her destroy me. After making myself a cup of coffee, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair where Anna used to sit. My mind raced with questions, with the need for answers. I wasn't looking for revenge, I just needed to know the full truth. I started with her phone records. I knew the guy's number, he used to be one of our gym trainers before Anna started going solo. It didn't take long to find it, his number popped up everywhere. Late night calls, early morning texts, messages at times she'd claimed to be at work. My stomach churned with every line I read. But that wasn't the worst of it. While sorting through some of her paperwork, I found something I'd never seen before, a second bank account. At first, I thought it might be something simple, an old account she forgot to mention. But as I dug deeper, it became clear that wasn't the case. The transactions were suspicious, large withdrawals, repeated charges at hotels, expensive dinners. And they didn't just go back 6 months. They went back much further. It wasn't just 6 months of lies. It was years. This wasn't just some fling. It wasn't a careless mistake or a brief lapse in judgment. Anna hadn't been lying to me for 6 months, she'd been building an entirely separate life behind my back for over a year. Maybe even longer. And it didn't stop with that guy from the gym. The further I dug, the darker it got. My hands trembled as I unearthed emails, encrypted messages, and receipts that told a story I didn't recognize. Vacations we never went on. Expensive gifts that never made it to our home. Dinners at upscale restaurants, booked under names I'd never heard of. This wasn't the Anna I thought I knew. This was someone entirely different, a stranger who'd managed to hide an entire world from me while standing right beside me. And then I found the messages that made my stomach drop. She wasn't doing this alone. Her best friend, Lisa, had been helping her the entire time. Lisa, the woman I'd always considered a friend, someone I trusted, someone who had always seemed supportive of our marriage, had been covering for Anna. I found message after message between the two of them, going back nearly a year. Lisa wasn't just aware of the affair, she was actively involved. She'd made excuses for Anna, helped her plan secret meetups, and even lied to me directly when Anna needed her to cover. The betrayal hit me in waves, each one harder than the last. It wasn't just Anna who had lied, it was Lisa, too. Someone I'd welcomed into my life, into my home. But then I noticed something in the texts, something I hadn't expected. "I don't think this is right, Anna. You're going to hurt him. Are you sure about this? He doesn't deserve it. If you're not happy, just end it. Don't string him along like this." Lisa hadn't been entirely on Anna's side. She'd tried, in her way, to steer her back, to stop her from going too far. It wasn't enough, but it wasn't nothing, either. The messages made my feelings about Lisa complicated. I should have been furious with her, and part of me was. But another part was curious. Why had she helped Anna at all? Was it loyalty? Fear? Guilt? Or something else? Days passed, and I heard nothing from Anna except a few desperate texts and voicemails, all of which I ignored. There was no going back for me, no rebuilding what she destroyed. But my thoughts kept drifting to Lisa. I needed answers. Finally, I decided to call her. At first, I told myself it was just to understand why she'd gone along with Anna's lies. But deep down, I think I just wanted someone to talk to, someone who already knew everything. When Lisa picked up, her voice was cautious. "Ryan?" "Yeah, it's me," I said, keeping my tone even. "We need to talk." There was a pause on the line before she answered, her voice quiet. I figured. I asked her to come over. It felt strange, but I didn't want to have this conversation over the phone. I needed to see her face, to gauge her reaction when I asked the questions that had been eating at me. An hour later, Lisa stood at my door. She looked nervous, like she was bracing herself for a fight. I didn't know what I was expecting, maybe guilt, maybe excuses, but there was something vulnerable about the way she carried herself. We sat down in the living room, the silence between us thick and uncomfortable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She just looked at me, her eyes full of unease, waiting for me to break the tension. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked finally, my voice low but steady. "Why did you help her?" Lisa flinched at the question, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She took a deep breath, then met my gaze. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said softly. "And I wasn't helping her the way you think I was." Lisa sighed deeply, running her fingers through her hair like she was trying to pull out the right words. "Ryan, I didn't help her the way you think," she began, her voice heavy with regret. "I tried to stop her, believe me, I did, but Anna, she's not someone you can easily reason with when she's made up her mind. I didn't agree with what she was doing, but I didn't want to lose her as a friend either." I shook my head, my thoughts a tangled mess. "So, you just stood by and let her cheat on me? For over a year?" Lisa winced, visibly recoiling at my words. "It wasn't that simple," she said softly. "I told her to stop. I begged her to end it. But Anna, she knows how to manipulate people. She's good at convincing you to see things her way. Honestly, I was scared of what she'd do if I didn't back her up. I know that doesn't make it right, but I didn't know how else to handle it." Her words stung, but as I looked at her, I could see how much guilt she carried. Her voice cracked as she spoke, and her hands fidgeted in her lap like they were trying to wring out the weight of the past year. "I'm sorry, Ryan," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I should have told you. I should have done something." The sincerity in her voice gave me pause. The anger that had been simmering inside me started to cool, just slightly. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the loneliness, but in that moment, I didn't hate Lisa, not the way I hated Anna. "Why didn't you?" I asked, my tone quieter now, more searching than accusatory. Lisa hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost trembling. Because I didn't want to hurt you, she admitted. I knew what this would do to you, and I couldn't bear being the one to break your heart. Her words hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just about Anna anymore. Lisa hadn't been a willing accomplice, she'd been caught in the middle of something she couldn't control. And maybe, just maybe, her reasons for staying silent weren't as black and white as I'd thought. We sat in silence for a while after that, the tension in the room softening. For the first time since my world had fallen apart, I didn't feel completely alone. I don't know what happens next, I said finally, my voice steady but uncertain. Lisa nodded, her expression softening as she met my eyes. Neither do I. But I'm here, Ryan. If you need someone, I'm here. And in that moment, something shifted between us, an unspoken connection I hadn't expected. After Lisa left, I was left feeling conflicted. My life was still in pieces, but talking to her had brought a clarity I hadn't felt in days. For the first time since I'd caught Anna in the act, I didn't feel entirely alone. Over the next few days, Lisa and I kept in touch. It started with brief texts, checking in, asking how I was holding up, but it didn't take long for those conversations to deepen. With each message, it felt like we were leaning on each other, both trying to make sense of the chaos Anna had left in her wake. Then, one evening, about a week after she came over, Lisa called. Her voice sounded shaky, like she was barely holding it together. Ryan, can I come over? She asked hesitantly. I just need someone to talk to. I hesitated. Part of me knew it might be complicated, but another part, the part that had been craving connection, couldn't say no. Yeah, I said, my voice soft. Come over. An hour later, Lisa was at my door. She looked different this time, tired, vulnerable, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Without saying a word, she stepped inside and wrapped her arms around me in a hug. I wasn't expecting it, but I didn't pull away. Instead, I found myself holding her, the warmth of her embrace strangely comforting. After so much betrayal, so much pain, it felt almost surreal to feel safe, even for a moment. We sat down on the couch, and Lisa opened up about everything weighing on her. She talked about her own struggles, how her job was draining her, how her relationships felt strained, and how her friendship with Anna was as good as over. She blames me, Lisa said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. Anna thinks I betrayed her just by talking to you. Like she doesn't realize that she's the one who ruined everything. Hearing that reignited a flicker of anger toward Anna. Even now, after all she'd done, she was shifting the blame to Lisa, the one person who had tried to keep her grounded. It only made her selfishness clearer. Lisa leaned back on the couch, staring up at the ceiling, tears glistening in her eyes. I feel like I'm losing everything because of her, she whispered. You're not losing everything, I said firmly. You still have me. She turned her head to look at me, her eyes wide and filled with emotion. For a moment, the air between us felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't quite define. We'd both been through hell, separately and together. And yet, sitting there on that couch, it felt like we were starting to find something new, a quiet understanding, a shared solace neither of us had been looking for but both desperately needed. Without thinking, I reached out and took Lisa's hand. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she gave a gentle squeeze, her touch hesitant but steady. Ryan, she whispered, her voice soft, almost questioning, as if she wasn't sure if this was something we should even acknowledge. Before I could stop myself, I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a decision, it was instinct, driven by a rush of emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel. The kiss started tender, almost fragile, like we were both testing the waters of something neither of us fully understood. But as the seconds passed, it deepened. The floodgates opened, and everything I'd been holding inside, the anger, the loneliness, the pain, poured into that moment. And Lisa, she kissed me back. Her hands slid up to my shoulders, pulling me closer, as if she was just as desperate to escape the chaos of her own life. This wasn't about lust or desire. It was about finding something steady, something real, in the ruins of everything we'd lost. But just as quickly as it started, reality came rushing back in. I pulled away, breathless, my heart hammering in my chest. Lisa's eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed, and her lips parted as she stared at me in shock, though I couldn't tell if it was from what I'd done, or from the fact that she hadn't stopped me. I'm sorry, I stammered, running a hand through my hair, the weight of what had just happened crashing down on me. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize, she said quickly, cutting me off. Her voice was shaky but firm. I wanted it too. We sat there in silence, the air between us heavy with unspoken thoughts. What had just happened wasn't something either of us had planned, but it didn't feel wrong. If anything, it felt inevitable. Like something that had been building without us realizing it. But even as my heart raced, guilt crept in. Not for kissing Lisa, but for the mess this could create. Anna's betrayal was still raw, the wound still open, and now here I was, tangled in something new with her best friend. I don't know what this means, I admitted quietly, breaking the silence. Lisa gave me a sad, understanding smile. Neither do I. But I don't regret it. Neither did I. After Lisa left that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind, the kiss, the emotions, the way her touch had made me feel something I hadn't felt in months, warmth. Connection. But as the hours dragged on, the questions started. Was this just two broken people finding comfort in each other? Or was there something more to it? Something deeper. The next morning, I woke up exhausted, my mind still racing. Work felt impossible, I couldn't focus on anything without my thoughts drifting back to Lisa. The kiss wasn't just lingering in my mind, it was haunting me, pulling me in a direction I wasn't sure I was ready for. By late afternoon, I gave in. Grabbing my phone, I typed out a quick message. Hey. You doing okay? It didn't take long for her to reply. Yeah, I'm okay. Just, thinking a lot about last night. I stared at her message for a long moment before typing back, me too. Do you regret it? The pause before her response felt endless, my stomach twisting as I waited. Finally, her reply came, no, I don't. But I think we need to talk about it. In person. A few hours later, Lisa was back at my door. This time, she looked calmer, more composed, but there was still a flicker of nervousness in her eyes. We sat down in the living room, the same place where everything had shifted the night before. The silence between us was thick, charged with tension, until Lisa finally broke it. Ryan, she began, her voice steady but cautious, I didn't plan for this. I didn't expect us to kiss, or for things to get complicated between us. But I can't sit here and pretend it didn't mean something. Because it did. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, all I could do was nod. It meant something to me too, I said, my voice quiet. But Lisa, we both know this isn't simple. I just found out my wife was cheating on me, with your help, no less, I added, not angrily, but as a reminder of the tangled web we were in. And now, this. Lisa winced slightly at the mention of Anna, but she didn't back down. I know it's messy, she said. And I know it's too soon to figure out what any of this means. But Ryan, for the first time in a long time, last night, I didn't feel alone. I felt like maybe something good could come out of all this. Her honesty caught me off guard. I looked into her eyes and saw someone just as lost, just as broken, as I was. But I also saw hope, something neither of us had dared to feel in weeks. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. Neither do I, she said softly. But, maybe we don't have to figure it all out right now. Maybe we just, take it one step at a time. And for the first time since my world had shattered, I felt like maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Lisa sighed deeply, rubbing her hands together nervously as though trying to summon the right words. Ryan, I know it's a mess. All of it. But I don't think what's happening between us is just because of Anna. I don't regret what happened last night. I care about you, Ryan. I always have. Her words hung between us, heavy and full of meaning. It was like something inside me shifted. Lisa wasn't just a rebound or a fleeting distraction from the chaos Anna had caused. She was someone who had been part of my life for years, woven into the same memories, the same moments that I thought were defined by Anna. But now, for the first time, I was seeing her differently. Lisa, I began, my voice steady but unsure. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Everything's still so raw. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I don't want to make choices from that place. I don't want to drag you into something that I'm not even sure I can handle. She nodded slowly, her expression soft but unwavering. I get that. I do. And I don't want to push you into anything, Ryan. But I can't pretend this connection between us doesn't exist. I've been thinking about it for a while, even before everything happened with Anna. I just never thought it could be something real. Her words landed harder than I expected, making me realize that the feelings between us weren't new, they'd been there, buried beneath years of shared experiences and unspoken thoughts. The kiss we'd shared wasn't just about comfort or a way to forget the pain. It was about something deeper, something I wasn't ready to fully understand yet. I don't know where this is going, Lisa, I said, my voice quiet but honest. But I don't want to lose you. I don't have the answers right now, I don't even know how to start navigating this, but I care about you too. That much I know. Her eyes softened, and she reached out, her hand resting on mine like she had the night before. We can take it slow, Ryan, she said gently. I'm not asking for anything more than that. Just, let's figure it out together, one step at a time. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. It wasn't a solution, and it wasn't going to magically fix everything. But Lisa wasn't demanding anything from me other than honesty and time. Okay, I said after a long pause, my voice firmer now. We'll figure it out. Lisa smiled then, a real, genuine smile, and in that moment, some of the weight I'd been carrying felt just a little lighter. There was still so much to untangle, so much to process, but for the first time, I didn't feel completely lost. After that conversation, things between Lisa and me started to shift. We didn't rush into anything, we agreed to take it slow, but the dynamic between us had undeniably changed. Over the next few weeks, we spent more time together. At first, it was under the guise of just talking. But those conversations grew longer and more intimate, and the unspoken feelings between us became harder to ignore. There was something easy about being with Lisa. Even with all the history between us, the complications, the baggage, being around her felt natural. The tension was still there, but so was the comfort. She had always been there in the background of my life, but now, it felt like I was truly seeing her for the first time. But just as I started to feel like I could move forward, Anna's shadow would creep back into my life. Whether it was through unexpected text messages, random calls, or the small reminders around the house, she found a way to linger. She didn't show up in person, thankfully, but her presence was like a ghost that refused to leave. And then one night, everything came crashing down again. I had invited Lisa over for dinner. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet evening to unwind and see where things might go. It felt different, though. Special. I'd cooked, set the table, even put on some soft music in the background. I wasn't trying to make it a big deal, but deep down, I knew this was a moment that mattered. When Lisa arrived, the evening started off light. We laughed, talked about anything but Anna or the past, and just enjoyed being in each other's company. For the first time in weeks, I felt normal, like the weight of everything wasn't crushing me for once. But just as we were finishing dinner, my phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it at first, not wanting anything to interrupt the moment. But then it buzzed again. And again. Lisa noticed my hesitation and gave me a soft smile. "You can get that if you need to," she said, her voice full of understanding. I shook my head. "It's probably nothing," I said, but the truth was, I wasn't so sure. The buzzing didn't stop. Reluctantly, I reached for my phone, my stomach twisting as I saw the name on the screen. Anna. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the notification. I could feel Lisa watching me, her calm presence grounding me as my emotions started to swirl. "You okay?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Just, give me a second." Stepping away from the table, I opened the messages, my heart sinking with every word. "I need to see you. I know I messed up, but we have to talk. Please, Ryan. Just give me one chance." The words were desperate, full of the regret I had been waiting for when I first kicked her out. But now they just felt hollow. I set the phone down and took a deep breath before returning to the table. "It was Anna," I said simply, meeting Lisa's gaze. Her expression didn't change much, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. "What did she want?" "She wants to talk." "Wants another chance," I replied, shaking my head as I sat down. "But I don't think there's anything left to say." Lisa reached out and touched my hand, her voice steady. "You don't owe her anything, Ryan. Not after what she did to you." And she was right. I didn't owe Anna anything. But as I looked into Lisa's eyes, I realized what mattered most to me in that moment wasn't the past I was leaving behind, it was the future I was cautiously beginning to build. With her. I grabbed my phone, already dreading what might be waiting for me. Sure enough, it was Anna. Message after message scrolled across the screen, frantic and scattered, like she was spiraling. I sighed, my thumb hovering over the screen, debating whether to even bother reading them. But then one text caught my attention. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." My stomach twisted. She was coming here. Now. Of all times. Lisa, who had been sitting quietly on the couch, noticed the change in my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "It's Anna," I said, my voice tense. "She says she's coming over." Lisa's eyes widened slightly, but her face remained calm. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked, her tone measured, though I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "No," I replied firmly, shaking my head. "This is my house, and I'm done letting Anna control everything." Lisa nodded, her expression softening, but there was still a trace of unease in her gaze. The tension in the air was palpable. The last thing either of us needed was a confrontation with Anna, especially now, when things between Lisa and me were so fragile, so new. Half an hour later, the knock came. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I walked to the door. Lisa stayed behind, her presence grounding me as I turned the handle and opened it. There she was. Anna. She looked different, disheveled, her eyes red and puffy, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her face carried a mix of desperation and regret, the polished, composed woman I once knew nowhere to be seen. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me to keep her away from Lisa. "What do you want, Anna?" I asked, my tone flat. She hesitated, wringing her hands together nervously. "I know I messed up," she began, her voice breaking. "I know I ruined everything. But I've been thinking about us, about everything we had, and I want to fix it." I stared at her, incredulous. Fix it? I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. Anna, there's nothing left to fix. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she stepped closer. Ryan, please. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I can't give up on us. We were good together. No, we weren't, I said sharply, the anger bubbling to the surface. You threw everything away, Anna. You lied to me for over a year. You made your choice, and now you want me to just forget all of that. It doesn't work like that. She flinched at my words, but I wasn't done. I trusted you, I continued, my voice rising. I loved you, and you took all of that and stomped on it like it meant nothing. And now you're here because you're miserable. Because you can't handle the consequences of your actions. That's not my problem anymore. Her sobs grew louder, her tears streaming down her face as she tried to compose herself. I've been a mess without you, she said, her voice trembling. I can't sleep, I can't think straight. I know I hurt you, but I still love you, Ryan. Don't you still love me? Her question hung in the air, but the answer was already clear to me. I searched myself for even a shred of the love I once felt for her, but all I found was anger and an overwhelming sense of finality. I don't, I said quietly, the words surprising even me with how true they felt. I don't love you anymore. The devastation on her face was immediate. For a split second, I felt a pang of guilt, but it passed as quickly as it came. Anna wiped her face with shaking hands. I didn't think it was really over, she whispered. It is, I said firmly. It's been over since the moment you decided to betray me. You made that choice, Anna. Not me. Just then, the door behind me creaked open, and Lisa stepped outside. The second Anna saw her, realization dawned, and her expression shifted from sorrow to fury. You, Anna spat, her voice dripping with disbelief. You're with her. You're replacing me with my best friend. I didn't flinch. Lisa's the only person who's been honest with me through all of this. She's been here while you've been lying and cheating. This isn't about replacing anyone, Anna. This is about you destroying everything we had. Her face contorted with anger, her tears forgotten as her voice grew venomous. You'll regret this, she hissed, her gaze bouncing between me and Lisa. Both of you will. Good night, Anna, I said firmly, stepping back toward the door. It's over. You need to move on. For a moment, she stood frozen, her expression a twisted mix of rage and heartbreak. But finally, she turned and stormed off into the night. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and turned to Lisa. She gave me a small, reassuring smile, though I could see the worry in her eyes. You okay? She asked quietly. I nodded, though the truth was, I wasn't sure how I felt. Relief? Sadness? Maybe a bit of both. But as I looked at Lisa standing beside me, calm and steady, I realized something important. Anna was gone. And Lisa was still here. And somehow, despite everything, that felt like the beginning of something real. A year passed, and my life felt unrecognizably different, in the best way. What began as a connection with Lisa, forged in the aftermath of betrayal and heartbreak, had transformed into something solid and meaningful. Slowly, we built a foundation rooted in trust, mutual respect, and a shared desire to move forward. It wasn't always easy, there were still moments when the shadows of the past crept in, but Lisa's patience and understanding helped us navigate through it all. After a few months of dating, Lisa and I made the decision to move in together. It felt like the right step, a way to fully leave the wreckage of my old life behind and create something entirely ours. There were challenges, sure. Nights where doubts would surface, or where the echoes of my marriage to Anna still stung. But Lisa was steady. With her, I found the kind of stability I hadn't even realized I was missing. Then, one evening, life threw us a new curveball. Lisa came home from work with an expression I hadn't seen before, nervous, almost hesitant. I could tell she had something on her mind, but I didn't push her. Over the months, we'd learned to give each other the space to speak when ready. She sat down beside me on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. "Ryan," she began softly, "I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened at her tone, though I tried to stay calm. "What is it?" Lisa hesitated for a moment, then reached out to take my hand. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Pregnant?" For a moment, the world seemed to stop as her words sank in. My mind raced, trying to grasp the full weight of what she'd just said. "Are you happy?" Lisa asked cautiously, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. Happy didn't even begin to cover it. A rush of emotions surged through me, joy, disbelief, excitement, and a healthy dose of fear. But most of all, I felt overwhelmed with love for Lisa and the life we were about to create together. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. "Lisa," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I'm more than happy. This is incredible." Her relief was palpable as she laughed softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. We sat there, holding each other, letting the magnitude of the moment settle over us. The months that followed were a whirlwind. We painted a nursery, attended every doctor's appointment together, and shared the excitement of telling our families. Lisa glowed with a happiness that made my heart ache in the best way, and for the first time in years, I felt like my life was finally falling into place. But even as Lisa and I moved forward, Anna's shadow still lingered. She hadn't reached out since the night she stormed off, angry about Lisa and me. Occasionally, I'd hear things through mutual friends, Anna complaining about how I'd betrayed her by being with Lisa. But the truth was out there. Most people knew Anna had destroyed our marriage with her lies and infidelity, and her attempts to rewrite history didn't gain much traction. Still, she hadn't disappeared entirely. And 2 weeks before the baby was due, she resurfaced, unexpectedly and uninvited. I was out running errands, picking up last-minute items for the baby. As I left the store, carrying bags filled with diapers and baby clothes, I saw her. Anna. She was standing near her car, dressed impeccably, as usual, heels, a tailored coat, her hair styled to perfection. But something about her seemed off. Her posture was rigid, her face tired, like the years since we'd parted had taken their toll. Our eyes met, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Finally, she broke the silence. "So, you're really doing it," she said, her tone sharp. "Building a life with her. With Lisa." Her bitterness was obvious, but I stayed calm. "I'm happy, Anna," I said simply. "We're having a baby." Her face twisted at the word, her expression a mix of anger and hurt. "A baby?" she spat. "With her? My best friend? Are you serious, Ryan? After everything we had, you just replaced me like I meant nothing?" I sighed, the weariness of this familiar argument settling over me. "Anna, you're the one who destroyed us. You lied, you cheated, and you left me with nothing. I'm not going to apologize for moving forward and finding happiness after what you did." "You replaced me," she said again, her voice cold and accusing. "No," I replied firmly, meeting her gaze. "What I have with Lisa isn't a replacement. It's something new, something honest. You made your choices, Anna. And now, I'm making mine." For a moment, she just stared at me, her eyes filled with a storm of emotions. I thought she might lash out, but instead, she stepped back, her expression hardening. "You'll regret this," she said bitterly. "You'll both regret this." And with that, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, her figure growing smaller as she disappeared into the distance. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction, just a strange sense of closure. Anna was still clinging to the past, to her anger and bitterness, while I was on the cusp of something new, something beautiful. When I got home, Lisa greeted me at the door, her smile warm and welcoming despite the weight she was carrying, both literally and emotionally. I kissed her, letting the weight of the day melt away in her presence. Anna was a closed chapter, one I no longer needed to revisit. My future was here, with Lisa, with our child, and with a life that felt brighter and freer than I'd ever imagined. For the first time in a long time, I had everything I needed.